Samuel did not reach for her hand again after she chose to follow him. Instead, he stepped back onto the trail and let the prairie speak between them. 3 steps forward, he said calmly. There is a shallow dip. Clara moved as instructed, her boots pressing into dry earth that still held the warmth of the afternoon sun. The air had changed. The wind was no longer wandering. It moved with direction now, carrying the faint metallic scent of rain somewhere beyond the horizon. She could hear his breathing ahead of her, steady as a metronome, neither hurried nor uncertain. He walked at a pace that matched hers, not the long, confident stride of a scout used to covering miles without pause. It was the first kindness she noticed that he did not mention. There is tall grass to your left, he said. Stay right. The ground is firmer. She followed the cadence of his voice more than his words. Each instruction was measured. No wasted sound. No impatience. After nearly half an hour, she felt the slope beneath her boots change, gravel shifting under leather. A creek. She smelled damp stone and moss. Water ahead, he said softly. It is narrow but fast from last night's rain. Clara hesitated. The memory of rivers had always been sound and chill and uncertainty. She tightened her grip on her walking stick. How deep? She asked. Mid-calf. I will walk beside you. For a moment, she almost asked him to take her arm. Pride stopped her. He sensed it without seeing her face. Place your hand on my shoulder, he said simply. Not because you cannot cross alone. Because the current is stronger than it sounds. She stepped forward and her fingers brushed coarse fabric, then muscle beneath it. Solid. Real. The creek bit cold around her boots and pushed harder than she expected, but his balance did not shift. His presence became a line she could follow through the rush of water and the roar in her ears. On the other side, he did not comment on the way her hand lingered a second longer than necessary. The wind rose sharply as if tearing open the sky. Thunder rolled low and distant, like wagons crossing wooden planks. Clara turned her face upward. The storm you mentioned, she said. It is closer. Yes. He paused. We have perhaps 2 miles before. Open ground. There is a stand of cottonwoods ahead. We will wait there. She listened to the change in his tone. It was not fear. It was calculation. You were watching our caravan before they left me, she said quietly as they resumed walking. It was not a question. Silence stretched between them for several steps. I watch many things, he replied at last. The prairie tells stories if you listen. What story did it tell you about us? She asked. Another pause. The wind pressed against them harder now, carrying dust across the open miles. That some people travel together, he said, and still leave each other behind. Clara absorbed that without speaking. Her boots moved in rhythm with his footsteps, guided by a man she had been warned against all her life, crossing land she could not see, toward a storm she could only hear, and for the first time since the wheels faded into distance, she no longer felt like weight abandoned on the plains, but like someone moving forward on purpose. The first drop of rain struck the earth with a sound like a warning shot across the sky, sharp and sudden, and then another followed, and another, until the prairie seemed to exhale beneath a curtain of falling water. Clara felt the shift before the storm fully arrived, the air growing heavy against her lungs, the wind circling instead of pushing straight across the plains. How far to the trees? She asked, raising her voice just enough to carry through the rising gusts. Less than half a mile, Samuel replied, closer now, his footsteps no longer several paces ahead, but almost beside her. He had adjusted without saying so. The ground changed under her boots again, softer, scattered with fallen leaves. She could hear branches bending overhead, cottonwood leaves trembling like paper. Thunder rolled deeper this time, not distant, but near enough to vibrate through her ribs. Samuel guided her beneath the thickest part of the grove, where the wind broke into uneven sighs instead of sharp whistles. Stand here, he said. Your back to the trunk. It will block most of the rain. She felt rough bark behind her shoulders and let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. The storm opened fully then, rain striking leaves in layered rhythm, the scent of wet earth rising rich and dark. For a moment neither of them spoke. The prairie had narrowed to this circle of sound, this shelter of wood and breath. Clara tilted her head slightly. You move as if you know every inch of this land, she said. Samuel did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter than the rain. I know enough to survive it. She sensed there was more behind the words, something left unsaid, but she did not press. Lightning flashed somewhere beyond her closed world, thunder following close behind. My father taught me to count between the flash and the sound, she said softly. He said it tells you how far away danger is. Samuel shifted, perhaps leaning against a neighboring trunk. And what does it tell you now? He asked. She counted in her head. 1, 2, 3. The thunder answered almost at once. Close, she admitted. A pause settled between them, not uncomfortable but aware. Your caravan will slow in this, he said. Wagons sink when the ground turns to mud. If we move at first light, we may reach the ridge before they do. Clara absorbed that carefully. You still mean to bring me back to them? She asked. The rain softened slightly, tapering from heavy sheets to steady fall. Samuel did not hesitate this time. I mean to bring you somewhere safe. The distinction hung in the damp air. She folded her hands around the carved walking stick resting against her knee. And after that? She asked. Wind pressed through the grove, rattling branches overhead. His answer came measured, almost distant. After that, the prairie will decide where I walk. Clara turned her face toward the sound of him, though she could not see his outline in the storm dimness. For the first time she wondered not only why he had been watching her caravan, but what he was walking away from as well. The storm did not frighten her now. It felt like a curtain drawn across the world, leaving only two travelers beneath cottonwood trees, listening to thunder and the unspoken weight of choices still ahead. By dawn the storm had spent itself, leaving the prairie washed clean and heavy with the scent of wet grass and dark soil. Clara woke to the sound of dripping leaves and distant meadowlarks testing the quiet. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she felt the rough cottonwood bark against her shoulder and remembered. Samuel was already awake. She could tell by the faint scrape of leather and the soft rhythm of him checking the ground with the toe of his boot. The rain will slow them, he said, as if continuing a conversation from the night before. Wagon wheels sink deep after a storm like that. We have an advantage now. Clara pushed herself to her feet, her skirts damp at the hem. You speak of them as if you know their pace better than I do, she said. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer and placed something small into her palm. It was smooth and cool, rounded like river stone. Feel the edges, he said. Her fingers traced carved lines she could not see. It is a marker, he explained. I leave them along certain trails. If someone knows how to read the land, they know which direction is safe. She closed her hand around it. You were not just watching our caravan, she said quietly. You were guiding it. A long breath left him, almost lost in the morning breeze. I was making sure it did not wander into ground that does not forgive mistakes. Clara lifted her face toward the rising warmth of the sun. Then why did you not warn them when they left me? She asked. This time the silence held weight. Because sometimes, he said at last, people do not hear warnings. They only hear what confirms their fear. The words settled between them, steady and unadorned. He began walking, and she followed the sound of his steps through damp earth that clung to her boots. The prairie after rain felt different underfoot, softer but certain, as if the storm had pressed everything into place. After nearly an hour, she heard something new on the wind. Faint at first, then clearer. The distant groan of wood under strain. The uneven rhythm of wheels dragging through mud. She stopped mid-step. That is them, she whispered. Samuel halted as well. The sound carried from a ridge, perhaps a mile ahead. Yes, he said. They slowed more than I expected. Clara felt her pulse quicken, not from fear of the land now, but from something more complicated. If we catch them, she said slowly, they will not thank you. I do not expect thanks, he replied. The wagons creaked again. Closer this time, followed by raised voices blurred by distance and wind. Clara tightened her hold on the walking stick. They will say you led me astray, she continued. They will say I was foolish to trust you. Samuel's tone did not change. What will you say? The question struck deeper than she anticipated. She listened to the struggling wagons, the men urging oxen forward, the frustration carried across open ground. Then she turned toward the sound of Samuel's breathing beside her. I will say, she answered, steady now, that the only person who saw my worth was the man they refused to see at all. The prairie stretched wide and waiting around them, and somewhere beyond the ridge a caravan wrestled with mud, unaware that the woman they abandoned was no longer standing alone. The ridge rose gently beneath their boots, damp soil clinging and releasing with each step, and the sound of the caravan grew clearer with every yard they gained. Clara could distinguish individual voices now, men calling to oxen, the strained creak of wooden wheels fighting against thick mud. The prairie after rain did not forgive haste. Samuel slowed as they neared the crest. "We stop here," he said quietly. "From this point, they will see us before we see them." Clara tilted her head toward the noise below. "Then let them see," she replied. There was no tremor in her voice now, only resolve. The wind carried the scent of churned earth and livestock. A wagon lurched somewhere below, followed by a frustrated shout. Samuel stepped half a pace in front of her, not shielding, not claiming, simply standing where he could be heard first. The caravan came into full sound as they reached the ridge top. Clara felt the openness in the air, the way voices no longer echoed but rose freely. Then a sharp intake of breath from someone below. "Clara," a man called, disbelief cutting through the morning. Another voice followed, wary, edged with suspicion. And who was that with her? The question lingered heavier than the storm clouds had the night before. Samuel did not answer for her. He did not step forward or backward. He waited. Clara moved one deliberate step ahead, planting her walking stick firmly into the softened ground. "It is Samuel Redbird," she said clearly, her voice carrying farther than she expected across the open space. "Hey!" Murmur rippled through the group below. She could feel it in the way the air shifted, in the sudden stillness of movement. "He guided me through the storm," she continued. "He brought me water when you left me with a canteen and a promise." Silence answered her, thick and uncomfortable. A wagon wheel groaned again, as if reminding them all how deeply the mud held them in place. "We thought you would not survive the night," one man said at last, his tone defensive rather than apologetic. Clara lifted her chin toward the sound. "You were correct," she replied evenly. "I would not have." The words settled over the ridge like a second dawn. Samuel finally spoke then, his voice steady and without accusation. "The ground ahead narrows near the ravine," he said. "If you angle the lead wagon 10 degrees west, you will find firmer soil. There is higher ground less than 2 miles from here." No one answered immediately. Pride wrestled with necessity in the space between breaths. Then an older voice, weathered by years and miles, spoke from somewhere near the center of the caravan. "Do as he says," the man ordered quietly. "We are losing time arguing." Clara heard the shift in tone, the reluctant acceptance. She felt Samuel turn slightly beside her, ready to step away now that his guidance was offered. "Will you walk on with them?" she asked softly, so only he could hear. The wind brushed across the ridge, carrying the smell of wet grass and distance. "I have brought you to their site," he replied. "The rest is yours to choose." Below them the wagons began to creak forward again, adjusting course as instructed. Clara stood between two worlds, one that had abandoned her and one that had refused to. And for the first time she understood that seeing was not always done with eyes. The prairie widened after the river crossing, rolling into long, open miles where the horizon felt endless and unclaimed. And by the 10th day since Clara had been left behind, the caravan moved with a quiet discipline that had not existed before. They no longer rushed at every patch of dry ground. They listened. Wheels turned at a measured pace. Drivers paused before slopes. Even the children had grown accustomed to silence before decision. That afternoon the wind shifted again, not with rain, but with something drier, carrying a faint tremor through the grass. Clara slowed mid-step. The oxen continued for another yard before Mr. Holloway noticed and called a halt. "What is it?" he asked. She tilted her head, filtering sound from distance. There was no storm scent, no river ahead. Instead, she heard a low vibration beneath the wind, irregular but approaching. "Riders," she said softly. "More than one. Perhaps 3 or 4. Half a mile east." The men exchanged uncertain glances. "You cannot know that," one of them muttered under his breath. Clara did not argue. She waited. The vibration grew clearer, hoofbeats steady against hardened earth. Within minutes the riders crested a low rise, their presence confirmed by the echo of leather and tack. They slowed as they approached, surprised to find a caravan already halted and prepared. The lead rider called out a greeting, cautious but not hostile. "We thought you might be in trouble," he said. "The lower crossing washed out yesterday. We were riding to warn travelers." Mr. Holloway nodded, relief evident in his voice. We took the higher bank, he replied. Guidance found us in time. The riders dismounted briefly, sharing information about the trail ahead, then continued westward at a brisk pace. As their hoofbeats faded, the younger man who had doubted Clara earlier stepped closer. You heard them before any of us, he admitted. She turned toward his voice. The land speaks before men do, she said. The caravan resumed its journey, but something had shifted again. They no longer questioned her pauses. When she stopped, they stopped. When she listened, they waited. By evening they reached a gentle rise overlooking miles of open prairie brushed gold by the setting sun. Clara stood at the edge, feeling the warmth fade from her face as dusk approached. Mr. Holloway joined her quietly. We would not be here without him, he said. Clara nodded once. Nor without you choosing to listen, she answered. The wind moved steadily across the grass, carrying with it the distant cry of a hawk and the endless rhythm of open land. Somewhere far beyond sight, Samuel Redbird continued along his own trail, unseen yet woven into every careful mile the caravan now gained. And as the first stars emerged in a sky Clara could not see but could feel settling wide and infinite above her, she understood that the greatest change had not been in the road ahead, but in the hearts that now walked it. The next morning carried a different weight, not of danger but of decision, and Clara sensed it in the quiet efficiency of the camp as the wagons prepared to move. The prairie stretched open and patient before them, yet something in the air felt closer, more contained, as if they were nearing the edge of one chapter and the beginning of another. Mr. Holloway approached her while the others secured the last of the supplies. There is a settlement less than 10 miles west, he said. A trading post, small but permanent. From there, routes divide. North toward the rail survey, south toward the river valley. Clara absorbed the information slowly. 10 miles. A measurable distance. An ending of sorts. And which road do you intend to take? She asked. North, he replied. Land grants are rumored there. She nodded, then tilted her head slightly. The southern road, she said, almost to herself. Mr. Holloway hesitated. Why? Clara listened. Not to the wind alone, but to something deeper, a memory of tone and cadence, of footsteps that had walked parallel to hers without claiming direction. Because it runs closer to older trails, she answered. Trails that do not always appear on maps. The wagons began to roll, the caravan moving with practiced calm. By midday the outline of the trading post announced itself through sound before sight. Hammer strikes against wood, distant conversation, the hollow echo of open space between buildings. As they approached, the caravan slowed once more. Strangers greeted them with curiosity rather than suspicion. Clara stepped down from beside the lead wagon and stood still, allowing the new place to reveal itself through scent and echo. Pine smoke, fresh-cut timber, a creek not far beyond the structures. Mr. Holloway joined her. This is where our path divides, he said gently. Clara ran her fingers along the smooth curve of her walking stick. Then this is where I choose, she replied. He waited. I will not continue north, she said calmly. A murmur of surprise rose from a few of the travelers. You would go alone? Someone asked. Clara shook her head slightly. No one who listens walks alone. She turned her face toward the southern breeze, warmer, carrying the faint rustle of grassland beyond the settlement. There are other travelers who will need guidance, she continued, and I have learned how to hear what others miss. Mr. Holloway exhaled slowly. He changed more than your course, he admitted. Clara smiled, a quiet expression born not of sentiment, but of certainty. He reminded me that I have one. The caravan prepared to split, some wagons angling northward, others lingering in uncertainty. Clara stepped toward the southern edge of the trading post, counting her strides with steady confidence. Somewhere beyond the line of wooden buildings, the prairie opened once more into wide, uncharted miles. And though she did not know if Samuel Redbird walked those southern trails at that very moment, she knew the lesson he carried would travel farther than either of them alone. On that open land, under a sky vast enough to humble any ambition, a blind woman began to walk toward her own horizon, not led, not abandoned, but choosing each mile by the sound of her own resolve. The southern trail did not announce itself with markers or carved signs. It began as a faint difference in the wind, a subtle change in how sound carried across the open land beyond the trading post. Clara stepped past the last wooden building and felt the space widen instantly, the echo of hammer strikes fading behind her, replaced by tall grass brushing in long, steady waves. The settlement noise dissolved into distance. Ahead lay miles of open prairie and the quiet responsibility of choosing each step without waiting for permission. She paused and listened. A wagon rattled somewhere behind her, turning north as planned. Voices called farewells. Mr. Holloway's tone carried one last time across the breeze. "May your road be steady," he said. Clara inclined her head in gratitude, though she did not turn back. "And may yours be wise," she answered softly. Then she began to walk. The southern wind carried warmth and a faint scent of sage. Her walking stick tapped lightly against the ground, mapping texture through vibration. Solid earth, short grass, occasional stones. She counted her strides not out of fear now, but out of habit refined into confidence. After nearly half a mile, she sensed another presence, not close enough to startle, but familiar in cadence. Footsteps angled across the prairie at a diagonal, matching her direction but not intersecting. She did not speak. She allowed the rhythm to settle beside her. The sound came, nearer by degrees, boots pressing into grass without urgency. Finally a voice, steady as ever, carried through the open space. "You chose the older trail." Clara's breath softened into a quiet smile. "It sounded less crowded," she replied. Samuel walked a few yards to her right, not guiding, not leading, simply present. "There are settlements farther south," he said. "Some are new. Some have been here longer than maps admit." She nodded. "Then there will be travelers," she answered. "And travelers make mistakes." A faint warmth entered his tone. "They do." They walked in companionable silence for several minutes, the prairie stretching endless around them. No caravan, no ridge, only wind and distance. "I will not always be near," he said at last, his voice practical rather than sentimental. Clara adjusted her grip on the walking stick. "You were never meant to be," she replied. "You were meant to remind me how to listen." The wind shifted slightly, carrying the distant cry of a hawk. Samuel slowed his pace. "Ahead, about 1 mile. The land dips before rising again," he said. "The soil can crumble near the edge. Stay to the right." She inclined her head. "I will." He did not step closer to ensure it. He trusted her to measure it herself. After another stretch of quiet miles, his footsteps angled away, veering toward higher ground. Clara continued forward without breaking stride. The prairie opened before her in unseen light, vast and patient. For the first time since the wheels had rolled away days ago, she did not measure her worth by who walked beside her, but by the strength in her own steady pace. And somewhere across that wide American land, two separate trails moved in the same direction, guided not by sight alone, but by a shared respect for the ground beneath their feet. The land dipped exactly as Samuel had said it would, a shallow descent that softened the wind and altered the echo of her steps. And Clara slowed not because she feared the drop, but because she respected it. She angled slightly to the right, testing the soil with the tip of her walking stick. Firm, then firmer still. The prairie rewarded attention. After the rise, the ground leveled into a wide basin where the air felt warmer and carried the faint scent of wood smoke. She paused, listened. There it was. Not the structured hammering of a trading post, but the lighter rhythm of a small camp. A kettle lid tapping softly in the breeze. A horse shifting weight. Two voices speaking low, uncertain of direction. Travelers. She stepped forward until her boots pressed into earth recently disturbed by wagon wheels. "You are near the edge of a slope," she called out calmly. The voices stopped. Silence answered her, startled but not hostile. "Who is there?" a woman asked, anxiety thin in her tone. Clara rested both hands on her walking stick. "A traveler," she replied. "The ground ahead will crumble if you press your wagon straight forward. Turn it 5 steps west before you descend." There was a hurried exchange of whispers, then the scrape of wheels being adjusted. The soil shifted, but did not give way. A man exhaled in relief. "How did you know?" he called back. Clara smiled faintly, feeling the sun warm her face. "The land speaks," she answered. She did not mention who had first taught her to listen. The wagon completed its descent safely, settling into the basin below. Footsteps approached her cautiously. We are headed south toward the valley, the woman said. We were told the trail was uncertain. Clara tilted her head toward the wind. It is uncertain, she agreed gently, but not unkind if you respect it. She heard gratitude in their breathing, not exaggerated, but sincere. The man cleared his throat. Would you walk with us a while? He asked. Clara considered the request. The prairie stretched wide in every direction, holding more travelers than any map could account for. Somewhere beyond sight, Samuel Redbird moved along his own quiet lines, guiding where he chose, never claiming the credit. She lifted her chin toward the open sky she could not see but could feel stretching endless above her. I will walk until you hear it for yourselves, she said. And so they began, 3 figures moving across the southern grasslands, 1 listening deeply, 2 learning how. The wind carried their footsteps forward, weaving them into the larger song of the American prairie. And long after the storm, long after the ridge and the caravan and the trading post, the lesson endured in every mile she chose. That sight is not a gift of the eyes, but a discipline of the heart, and that true guidance does not bind another to your side, but teaches them how to walk steady when you are no longer there.